I am here today to celebrate the launch of Harm None by Gay Lynch. I'm the founder of Hembury Books, and I have published Gay's book today. I'm going to ask Gay some questions about her fantastic YA novel, but first I'm going to read Gay's bio. Dr. Gay Lynch writes essays, novels, hybrid memoir pieces, academic papers, book reviews, and short stories on unceded Burrung land, land of the Kulin Nation. She is an adjunct lecturer in creative writing and English at Flinders University. With mentoring by Eva Salas, her first book, Clean Skin, was published in 2005, and in 2019, her second novel, Unsettled, an Irish settler novel set in South Australia, was published by Ligature. Her essays and stories have appeared in Best Australian Stories, Meanjin, and Griffith Review, among other publications. Originally shortlisted for the Adelaide Festival Literary Award for an unpublished manuscript, Harm None is her first young adult novel. Gay, congratulations. How are you feeling?
Thank you, Jess, and good morning. I'm feeling a bit dithered, but I'm good. I am very happy to see this manuscript in a hard copy, and I guess it's an older manuscript, as you say, but I have done some work on it, and I hope that it's imperfectly beautiful. Not that one would ever dream of anything being perfect. One would expect it to be imperfect, but it was important to me because the story was the conduit for me going to get some extra tools in my toolbox after I started writing. I'd published a few things for Macmillan Education, and I'd written a whole novel which was mentored by Eva Salas, and she suggested that I go into the postgraduate program. There were conventions that I didn't know about after not writing for quite a long time. For example, simple things like single and double quotation marks, and just the whole modern contemporary publication scene. So it was Tom Shapcott, the professor at the time of creative writing at University of Adelaide, read this shortlisted manuscript and enabled me to go straight into the program and to write the MA in a year, which was really lovely. And then I could go on to the PhD. So it was quite a groundbreaking book, or a watershed book for me, perhaps.
Yeah. And it's a special book to you, isn't it?
Yes, I suppose it's important to me as a memory piece because it's set in a place that I spent many, many years very much in touch with the natural environment by the River Inman, although it's fictionalized to a certain extent in the book. But it means a lot to me to remember the birds and the trees and the way of the river, and nice to have it in a hard copy form that I can share with people.
That other people can enjoy.
Yeah.
Can you tell viewers about Harm None?
Well, it's social realist, I suppose, feminist. It's kind of mystical because it involves Wiccan religion and has thriller elements. It's a teenage young adult novel set in 2003, before the technology was quite as advanced, although one might doubt that today. The narrative is focalised through Garnet, a 15-year-old schoolgirl who lives with her mother Raven and grandmother Ebba in a cottage near the river on the Fleurieu Peninsula. And in a low-key sort of way, they practice white witchcraft and also keep in touch with their Scottish family roots. When the novel begins, it's in Mabon, which is an important time just before winter. It's the autumn equinox, and it's a time for gratitude, but also preparing for all sorts of ceremonies like shaking salt around the windows and doors to prevent intrusion, which we could do a little bit within Melbourne sometimes. And scrying, looking into bowls of water and visualising the future. Yeah, so the other custom that's good to do right now, which is good anyway, is to write your wishes for the future on a piece of paper and then tear it up. And Garnet and her grandmother do that. And the grandmother says she would like to be able to access tears. She would like to be able to cry more. And Garnet jokingly says she would like to be slimmer, which is a whole different riff. This is not a book that's worried about body shape terribly much. Yeah.
Amazing.
So I could tell you a little about each of the characters.
Yes, I would love that.
Or I actually pulled out a paragraph just to encapsulate the grandmother and the mother, because each of them are quite important to Garnet. In fact, sorry?
Do you read us a passage?
Could I?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Ebba. Ebba worked late counselling in a women's centre called Sappho, where she picked up clients referred on by government agencies and staffed with a few very busy, broad-minded doctors. Women walked in off the street to start courses on Reiki and self-defence and unloaded all their problems at the same time. Ebba stayed calm but complex and wore stone beads in multiples of 9. Garnet imagined her connecting with the battle-scarred and weary. Excuse me. She bet that they stared at her granny's wild white hair, her black suit and her gentle eyes, one disconcertingly green, the other blue, and then tried harder to survive. So that's Ebba, the grandmother. Raven. Raven was sweet, little point in moaning that she was kind of disconnected. She'd planted a poison garden, for fuck's sake, with everything lined up in rows and obsessive symmetry that led all the way to the river. There were episodes when Raven had technically stacked it, moved into an eastern suburbs private hospital to get her shit together. Most of the time, Raven was a dreamy absence, a shadow wafting out of the house to tend to her garden or walk by the river. Monday to Friday afternoons, she worked in a second-hand bookshop, traded hard covers, poured coffee, and nodded serenely at the couple of women who discoursed there about human genomes, the critical state of sand piling, the nature of information, and the death of the novel. So they're very important. It's a triumvirate, if you like. It's 3 women living together, and 4 things happen to disturb their peace. Garnet manages. She's very settled. She's a new student, or fairly new student at the school, but she's on an accelerated learning program, and running brings her happiness, and she swims. And her high school friends, Cody, Zane, Lyndon, Daisy, and Kendra, they all belong to a group that communicate via computers on Messenger, not like anything sophisticated like a smartphone. So I could tell you the 4 things that happen to disturb the peace. All right. So the first thing that arrives is a man with a dog moves into the cottage next door, and they've always had the river to themselves. He begins unloading cages of birds. His behaviour becomes predatory like the birds. There's a little paragraph. From upstairs, Garnet watched him slide like oil from behind the wheel of his car in his black leather jacket and pants, more suited to a motorbike than a car. A heavy silver chain dangled from his pocket. At his heels sat one of those killer, ill-treated or neglected dogs that drag babies out of prams, crunch toddlers in backyards, and latch onto the legs of war veterans, though right now the dog looked milder than its owner. Dark hair cropped short and fake blonde tips must be flaky at his age. Ditto the silver moon that glinted from his left ear. The new neighbour stared hard at Garnet's window as if he'd picked up her scent. So that's the first thing that happens that disturbs her. And then the second thing that happens is that a series of anonymous blurry videos arrive by email in which Scottish girls are accused of witchcraft, but the film clips disappear as soon as Garnet opens them. Back then, this happened with Snapchat.
Yeah. It was the precursor to that.
Is the precursor, yeah. The third thing that happens is that gossip breaks out in the town, targeting Garnet's mother and grandmother. Garnet's just begun studying The Crucible, Arthur Miller's famous play about the Salem witch trials, and she begins to see connections. And the fourth thing, I did have a little synopsis that Garnet wrote for the plot of Arthur Miller's play to tease her mother, because her mother knows the play too, and she thinks that if her mother knows it, the play must be ancient. I don't know if I should read that little synopsis or not. It just kind of...
You could read that.
It's kind of the black humour that Garnet uses with her mother. Remind me of the basic plot, said her mother. Weird religious community in America. Girls work like slaves and the men pontificate until one of them bonks his wife maid. And just like that, just like happens now, she loses her job, but he's picked the wrong chick. Abigail counter-accuses everyone in his orbit. Mass slaughter ensues, or a quiv. So the fourth thing that happens is that Zane, a year 12 boy, begins to show annoying interest in Garnet, begins to turn up outside her bedroom window in the middle of the night. So that's probably enough.
How annoying. Why did you choose this intriguing title, Harm None?
Well, originally the title was Intent, which is pretty much the same as Harm None. Harm None, do your will is kind of a code of practice for Wiccan followers. It's ethics. If you act, you have to make sure that anything you do does no harm to others. It's not a bad rule. The other thing they believe is that everything good and bad that you do comes back threefold. So a bit like karma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This is your first YA novel. You've previously published 2 other books, but what drew you to YA specifically?
Well, I don't know that. It's looking back, it's hard to remember the exact motivation, but I think partly I was writing to teen me. When I was 11 or 12, I was living in a little town with only one other girl in the town who didn't read, and so I was hungry for stories, and I began to read a lot of adult literature. And I guess in part I'm writing to those kids that are just a bit addicted like me, and they just read print wherever they encounter it. And in the 90s, I was working as a middle school teacher librarian and taught units of work across 8 classes. And I felt really sympathetic to some students. I remember a colleague saying once, "Why would you spend $32 on a book when only 3 or 4 students are going to read it?" And I was thinking that maybe we shouldn't spend the whole budget on farty middle primary books targeting reluctant boy readers. So I ran a weekly club called the Radical Readers, during which I summarised a lot of books and then let them borrow them, read little bits, and then allowed them first borrower privileges. I had the parents on side, which was helpful because I remember once Judge Boland, he made a pronouncement about a teen or a young adult book because it used the word fuck. And my principal came down to the library and took my 3 copies away. So I was aware of getting the parents on side was a good idea. And sometimes I had things sat out in the back of the office, but I really loved promoting the young adult literature and the teen literature to those more mature and literary readers. And it heartened me that a lot of them were lovely boys.
You can change their lives by doing that at a young age.
Yeah, I hope so. So. Some books, you have to be a little patient and have great confidence that they're going to reap a good reward. You might need to jump a road hump in the first 2 pages or something like that. You have to have the right sensibility, I think, to trust some books. And I loved when I saw the take up. If I read sections to them and then they went back and started again.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
And the banned book went on to be Children's Book Council Book of the Year, interestingly enough.
There's nothing surer of increasing a book's popularity than by banning it as well, right?
I suppose, but it didn't help my library.
No,
couldn't be borrowed in my library. They had to go buy it.
Goodness me, over just a 4-letter word. Harm None has a very interesting backstory. I think all books have a unique path to publication, but for me, it's really special to be publishing Harm None because this is why I set up the business, because I want all these great manuscripts to be available to readers. Can you tell us about the backstory around Harm None, how it was shortlisted for an award in 2004? Is that correct?
2002 it was shortlisted. Yeah. And it's only a short story, really. At that time, I had a lovely agent, Fran Kelly, who's now retired.
I know Fran Kelly. She used to work at France. We're still in touch.
I did not know that. In fact, I have lost touch with her since I came to Melbourne, but we've just had a really lovely long phone call and caught up a little bit. She stopped being my agent not long after that because, as I said, she retired. But she did take Harm None to some of the big publishing companies. In fact, Random House seemed keen on it. We had publicity photos and urgent meetings, and it went to an acquisitions meeting, but in the end it didn't get up, and I never really heard the reason why. So one could speculate, but obviously I heard a publisher say once, you think it's hard for you, but we have to jump without a parachute. But I do think sometimes now writers are a bit forgotten because they do all this work, and sometimes they're not treated courteously, or they're not not responded to at all. But in this case, it was looked at, and Random House were keen. And I don't know what happened then. I think I got engaged, through Eva taking me in, and taking me into the postgraduate writing program, but also the book that she mentored with me was a prize from the South Australian Writers' Centre. It was then published by the publisher, who shortlisted Harm None, but didn't at that time. They published very little or no young adult fiction, so they said, let's go with Clean Skin, which they published.
Okay.
Yeah. So then I just probably went on and put Harm None aside and became involved in writing the MA novel the first year, and then after that the PhD novel.
Yeah, other things took over. But isn't it great that now other people can enjoy it too?
Well, I am happy for that, but my main happiness is to have that story for myself and for family. And of course, it's good to share. It's a very particular time, and I remember my kids at that time, they didn't have a lot of technology. And I remember my son rushing home from school to his little computer in his room to talk to his friends by message. It was so pretty.
Messenger.
Really.
Yeah.
It's very primitive messaging.
But it was the most exciting thing in the world.
I think so. Even the interface was pretty ugly.
Yeah, but we didn't know any different then. So
no, it seemed exciting then. It's about as exciting as Encarta, which I'm sure no one's heard of now, which was an online encyclopedia.
Yeah, I remember that. Can you please tell us about the white witches that you mentioned at the beginning? And you met them during your research for Harm None?
Sorry, could you say that again?
You met some white witches during your research for Harm None.
And
tell us.
I'm not remembering easily.
Also.
Yeah, sorry, we had a little wobble in the transmission there. I'm not remembering easily how I met them. I wonder if one wasn't a daughter of a friend, or there was a girl studying acting in the Valley, or whether I'm sure I was talking to these white witches before I got to Adelaide Uni, and but anyway, there was a Wiccan club at Flinders University, and so I interviewed these girls. I don't even know why I was interested, except there was something to do with the gardening I was doing, I suppose, and they were very sweet. It almost worked like prayer for them. That obviously Harm None, that only did white magic, only did good spells, only did it with women. They did chant and dance, light candles and make spells, but they seemed helpful spells, like, that they wanted to pass their chemistry test, or they liked a boy and they wanted him to notice them, or something like that. Of course, a couple of them did say that they'd been experimenting with more euphoric effect with some substances, including the datura flower, and that they got very hot and put themselves in a bathtub. So they were university students. Of course, they were experimenting with all sorts of things that they probably didn't even share with me. But yeah, I thought they were very wholesome, and they were very interested in nature loving. And yeah.
How did they dress?
How did they dress?
Yeah.
I think they just dressed like teenagers with they were keen on black, but then wasn't everyone. I actually noticed when I was looking at the witchcraft stats for recently, there's a witchcraft shop in Murrumbina in Melbourne, and they have a quote from someone from there, witch, and it's a man, interestingly enough, who says, I prefer to dress in black because it's slimming.
A very practical witch.
Yeah, but these were just girls. But we'll maybe talk about that a bit more, but that it is a growing thing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I wasn't really at Monash as well. There was some Wiccan clubs, and I happened to be at Stonehenge one day for the winter solstice, and that was extraordinary to watch. That ritual. Could we go back to talking about Garnet and her motivations in your book? She's the 15-year-old, the main character.
Yes. Well, I'll be curious to know what people make of her. I think she's very grounded and pragmatic, and some of her moods are driven by her difficulty in communicating with her mother, who's not always well. Her mother's sometimes unstable, but she gets very good counsel from grandmother Ebba, who believes in her. And I have heard in some families that affection jumps a generation. I don't think it's particularly so here. I think she really loves her mother. She just wants her mother to be more aware of her needs. But she has a really strong moral core, I think, Garnet. And when she's challenged by people who might mean harm, she tends to speak up and to stand up. And without any spoilers, by the end of the story, she's willing to act to save others. But rescue isn't always possible in real life. And the teen years are fraught. So most issues aren't clear cut, are they? I remember.
No, they're not. And there's an intensity to everything that adds an extra layer of sometimes complexity. Can you tell us, please, about nature religions? What are they, and are they growing in number?
Well, apparently only a quarter of Australians write that they, my specs on actually, for a minute. I've got some notes here, but I was looking at the ABS census, and a quarter of Australians wrote none for religion in the last census. Identification with Christianity is decreasing, but nature religions have increased. What looked like to me from the numbers about eightfold. And it includes paganism, animism, druidism, and Wicca, which is what the women practice in this book. And the other interesting thing was that it was inclusive of all backgrounds and sexual orientation. And some of the groups in Melbourne incorporate First Nations practice. Well, I would assume they would have First Nations people among them. But for me, this is not a handbook of Wicca. It's more about women's care of nature and for each other in a solitary way, in a private way. But apparently, Tasmania is has the biggest covens, or the most covens in Australia at the moment. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, and that makes sense. It's a really pristine environment.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I was thinking more that it has been previously a home for a lot of alternative people as well, till the writers invaded, the literary exiles.
Oh, we are alternative, are we not?
I think we're all alternative, don't you?
I think some people are more on the straight and narrow, but I don't know many writers who aren't originals in their own way.
Yes. Yes. Well, you've got the overview. I'm just a private little scribbler.
No, you are so well enmeshed in the literary scene in Australia. I've been incredibly impressed by how many people I've learnt about, so many prominent writers through you.
Well, I used to have this silly thing I used to say to students that reading is breathing in and writing is breathing out. And I do love people that do have that feeling.
That's beautiful. I
There's
love
none
that.
of this, we don't have time to read, we're too busy, because it's like a drug for some people.
It is. It is. Yeah, it is for me. I mean, I read every night, and I'm writing every day, and I think I would be unwell without it.
And you're reading other people's work, and I can tell from reading your book that you're a reader.
That's very nice. Datura, the plant. Can you please tell us about it, and have you ever tried it?
I have not. I am the biggest wuss. I am not a risk taker, and most of my mistakes have been made by accident. But I did know about Datura because of its beauty, and of course I was interested to investigate it. It turned up in one of my backyards, and a friend came over who was also a plant nurseryman, and he said, "Do you know, if your baby crawls over there and crumbles that Datura leaf and puts it in his mouth, he will hallucinate, or he could hallucinate and die." So I stopped admiring the beautiful trumpet light flowers and grubbed it out.
Goodness me.
When my son, or all my children used to eat despicable things, terrible things, dog poo and all sorts. And so I knew they weren't very discriminating. So it was best to take it out. But when they became old enough and their palate was more developed, I had a self-seeded one and I put it back in. And so it seems most of my homes have had Datura plants. But when I came to Melbourne, I saw them in the backyards. But it seems to me they must have had some problems before I got here 6 years ago or whatever it was, because there's quite a lot of convention in plant nurseries and so on, not to sell it, not to order it. It's not encouraged, which is fair enough. But I'm a grown up, so I can have datura.
Buy it online from overseas or something.
No. In South Australia, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Apparently, but the other thing, of course, is that any plant material can be taken in toxic level you can be poisoned by a lot of plants in the garden. And if you read, as most of us did from about the age of 11 or 12, read Agatha Christie, we know that the garden is a dangerous place and that you can readily find murder weapons just naturally occurring.
Wow.
Yeah.
I found it very cool that my mum had opium poppies.
Yes,
in our garden.
And they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
Our neighbour further down the river had opium poppies, and she used to have an opium poppy party when they all flowered, a garden party, and we'd all go to admire them. I've never heard any fuss around opium poppies because I think probably they're hard to process, and you need to process them in bulk to earn anything, even pocket money, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they're ornamental there.
Yeah, they're huge in Tasmania again because the pharmaceuticals harvest them there to make, I don't know what those drugs are called, that class of drugs. I do really, but it's gone.
Painkillers and things, opioids.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think opioids, but other things as well. Morphine.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so we know that the garden's dangerous.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Now I'd like to ask you about where and when you love to do your writing.
Well, it depends what you call writing. I'm a big fan of what Kevin Brophy calls pre-conscious composition, and unfortunately it's caused me a lot of insomnia. It's one of the reasons I have insomnia anyway. And so I do find that I wake in that early waking time, somewhere between dream and sleep, is when my brain has a download, the dot points. Or sometimes even for essays or conference papers, or a problem with a character that won't solve, the answer will come in that period, and then I have to jump up and write it down. And inconsiderately, sometimes that happens at 3 a.m. So I think that part of writing is really important. But for the mechanical discipline part, I always arrive at my desk at 9 a.m. every morning. I feel I need to do this because it doesn't matter what. Getting to the desk at 9 a.m. it feels like a real job, and I read for an hour, and sometimes I don't make the hour because a little back door opens in my brain and it triggers things, and something will come to me, and then I can move to the computer and start writing. And sometimes it does take an hour, sometimes an hour and a half to get into that kind of zone before I write. But I find I can't just go straight to the computer and write.
That's really interesting.
Sorry.
That's interesting. What kind of genre do you mostly read?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a balancing act where I might read I might read an article in the Monthly or the Saturday paper or the London Review of Books. I will always read a novel, some part of a novel, a couple of chapters. I do have to mix it up just to get the reading done. Otherwise, I would just sit there all morning and read the novel like I would do on holidays. There would be no discipline at all. Mm-hmm. But I do find that all of them are good triggers for thinking, all those different things. And it seems to be the only way I can do it. It doesn't really trouble me to move from one to the other. Sometimes there are connections.
Yeah, there are connections everywhere if we look for them.
Yeah.
I'm just going back to things, plants. Have you planted some plants for while researching the book? Did you? And you tried to
I don't know if it was it's chicken or the egg kind of thing. We lived on 57 acres, and I always like to experiment with planting unusual things like black lilies and things. And I did start to drift into that area, I suppose, before, after, and during the research, where I was planting sacred trees, catkins, foxgloves, things that do have toxic ability sometimes, but they are things of beauty as well, and often associated with magical practice. I also planted wormwood as a companion planting between the roses to stop the roos and the rabbits, because wormwood is disgusting. It's smelly and did you just asked me about the absinthe plant?
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I suppose I didn't call it absinthe then, but I did know absinthe because I'd loved reading French novels, and Balzac and Baudelaire and all those people, they were enjoying absinthe, and it seems so romantic.
Yeah.
But then I didn't take up laudanum or smoking opium in a pipe either. It was just something that seemed romantic. So I was aware of absinthe, but since then I have tried it. Did you ask me that? I think
Yeah. So do you have any recollection?
Well, yes, because it was a couple of weeks ago. I thought, Jessica and I have talked about this. She could ask me. And so I said to my son, I'm going to try absinthe. And he said, don't, Mum, it's disgusting. But actually, you can make quite a nice cocktail with it. And I mixed mine with Prosecco. And it was very nice because I've always been a licorice lover. And it's got an aniseedy sort of taste, if you like ouzo.
Yeah.
Which I learned to like on an early trip to Greece in my 20s. Ouzo or Pernod, any of those tastes, Sambuca, if you don't mind those tastes, it's not dissimilar.
Yeah, I had it in Thailand many years ago and thought it was wonderful. And it's very costly.
Is it?
Yeah, it was very costly. So it was a special kind of thing just to try it.
Well, in Thailand, I'm asking this because I think it's worrying, but in Australia, they no longer put whatever it is in that makes it hallucinogenic. So I don't know in Thailand whether they might take it out there or not.
I don't remember any hallucinogenic, but then if it was, would I remember? I don't know. But
that's what my son said. After you've had a couple, you don't remember anything.
Yeah, you don't want to black out. That's awful.
I don't know that he did that, but anyway, I shouldn't be talking about him. He won't like it.
Well, I'm impressed by your, research for the book. Your commitment to that is wonderful for the launch as well as the writing of it.
I do think it's fun. Like for my last novel, Unsettled, I deliberately went out and ate pickled eel because one of my characters was always diving for it. And actually, it was delicious. It's just kind of the yuck factor, getting over the yuck factor that it looks like a snake.
Yeah. And it's jellied, right? Is it jellied eel?
Mine wasn't jellied. It was just pickled, so it was quite firm, like calamari or something. It was a nice texture, actually. I really liked it. Yeah, because some of these things we know about already from reading, like Harry Potter and in Matilda, Roald Dahl's Matilda, I think the father says to Matilda something like, "It was like wormwood to your mother." So we know, we have associations with words. It's good sometimes to experience the real thing.
Absolutely.
If they're safe.
If they're safe, that's the thing. But also books, for things that are not safe, books are a safe vehicle for experiencing those things. This is why it's so wonderful.
Yeah. I remember Marcus Clarke, when I was researching the Bohemian poets in Melbourne, in regard to writing and substances, he employed a doctor as an observer, and I think he was smoking something like marijuana, and he wrote for 12 hours or something under the influence of whatever it was. And the doctor observed him to see whether he wrote better, worse, or whether he was lucid, or what his mood was, whether his mood had changed, or tone in the work. Actually, I've forgotten what they concluded in the end. I just thought that was crazy that's really taking it a long way to, to see how you write best.
It is, isn't it? But it's fascinating. It's fascinating because there's definitely a linkage. I mean, I think it's very difficult if you need something as a crutch to write, because you want to be writing a lot, which means you need the crutch a lot. So, because wasn't it Hemingway, I think, would have a scotch or something while writing, I think, and I think that can be a slippery slope.
I think a lot of writers rely on alcohol and historically cigarettes to write. And
guilty.
Yeah, and journos. Really, I mean, that's what you would imagine. The old pictures of Dashiell Hammett and people like that tapping over their keyboard with a cigarette.
Yeah,
streaming out the other side. Well, I mean, it does actually, doesn't it, sharpen the mind or something? But then other things like night coughing are probably not helpful.
Yeah, it does. But it also, what I learned is that it does distract the brain, because once you take it, you've got the hit, but then the craving begins immediately and it just keeps turning up. So it actually distracts you, every hour to want that, instead of being able to just sit for 3 hours and write. Yeah.
Well, I guess we all have to like face up to the effect that our behavior has on things. I mean, we've all given up a few things, and sometimes there's hardly a difference to be noticed. Do you find, or it's not as as significant as we think in our practice? And sometimes we work better.
Yeah. It's interesting, but I think if you decide to give something up, you have done so for a reason. So it must be significant. And even if it's confidence in your own abilities, your ability to give something up, as opposed to the drain on your self-confidence of not being able to, that is more the mental impediment, I think, and that crosses everything, your ability as a writer and everything. So why can't I give this up if I think I should? If you don't need to give it up, you don't need to give it up. If you're for it.
That's a good point. I mean, that is true. Obviously, our overall well-being means we can write longer. But I was thinking irreverently. You mean there are some people that don't index everything to their writing? That any habit or change, will it make me write better? It's not always the index for every person.
No.
And there comes a point where writing can become quite. For someone like you've always written under pressure as a journalist. With deadlines and which is something a lot of creative writers probably aren't as aware of until crunch time, just before publication. But I think it's the kind of discipline that means that you can do it more easily in the end.
Yeah.
Do you find that?
I agree. Yeah, I do agree from personal experience.
Yeah.
So Gay, Hum None is out today. What is next for you?
Well, as you and I know, Hembury are about to publish a collection of short stories for me, Hebe's Lament and Other Stories, which is a great joy to me because all of the stories except two, I think, there's 20 stories that are published or shortlisted, or one of them's won a prize. And it's a joy to me for people to be able to read them without hitting a paywall.
Yeah.
To be able to find them in a book. And it's a joy for me to put them all together so that I can tidy my desk.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So I'm very much looking forward to them being in a collection. I'm going to an international short story conference in Killarney in Ireland in a month or two, so it will be really lovely for me to be able to put copies of them on the table and to share with all those people from around the world who are doing the same. Yeah,
that's so great. Now, you're having an in-person launch for Hum None. That will be at the Moat. Is that correct? That's exciting.
Well, it's just I haven't lived in Melbourne for very long, and so I don't know a lot of people, or in particular fiction writers. So for that reason, I'm having a very small celebration in an area that has very limited number of people. It's for safety reasons. But if anyone is interested to come, they can maybe just DM me.
Yeah, sure.
Send me a message, because I do have to account for the numbers.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, although I chose the date first, it was Albo called the election on my date. So
it's on the same day? You haven't
changed. It's on the same day. Yeah, it's on the same day as the election. So I imagine there'll be lots of people around and so on. But it will be very small though, and so just DM me if you'd like to come. I know some people that follow you who've contacted me already.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing some footage of that. Now, where can people connect with you? Where's the best place?
Well, I'm not on. I'm in a dilemma about that. Twitter. I was never big on tweeting anyway. I have enough trouble managing Facebook and Instagram. So Facebook and Instagram, I'm there.
Yes.
And mainly it's about books and flowers. I post a lot about books, little pithy book reviews. So obviously that's a way to connect. But I'm not someone who is excited about having a massive profile. I do check when people contact me for followings or friend requests, because I, like everybody else, I'm sure, I had a bad experience with someone who hacked in and began phoning and messaging me on the office computer and made my life miserable for a couple of months. So I am quite careful to choose people who I either have shared friendships with, or I can see that they're legitimately. Lately, I've met a lot of people who are legitimately writing, have, and writing seriously and or interested in books and writing and doing. I can see that they're active.
Yeah.
That it's not just like two slides, and it's absolutely not a surgeon from the US Army
widowed
who speaks to me in a way I find difficult.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, widow. Have you had them?
Yeah, on Facebook, they're doctors, in the US seeking friendship or something, it's just gross. And they're not real people, they're hackers.
I know. I realize. Yeah, I mean, we assume that they're not. I think I satirize it in one of my stories. It's probably some 13-year-old with acne in a big room. I don't know. So I know they don't love me for myself, and that's humbling.
No, they want to use us and abuse us. They want money.
Okay, let's not go further.
Okay. Well, I want to say congratulations on the publication of Harm None. And it's been an absolute pleasure to work with you, Gay. It's been a lot of fun, and you've taught me a lot of things.
You have me. And I want to thank you as well for such a fun experience where I've learned a lot, and and I've appreciated the kindness and the warmth of your tech team, your wonderful editors, Jess and Meg and Earl, making lovely trailers with Booble Cows, and trying to meet my extreme expectations at all times with a smile and being kind to me, and even despite my wild imagination.
And I think we have, and I think it's built the buzz around your books and your next book as well, which is the whole point of doing these things.
Yes, it's been a lovely experience, and thank you.
Our pleasure. Thanks, Gay.